How does China perceive the term Global South? Is it a matter of semantics, or does it carry a deeper political significance? Let's delve into this intriguing topic. In 2023, the term Global South emerged as a buzzword on the global stage. China, however, initially steered clear of this term. It was later used sparingly, often encapsulated within quotation marks. This subtle distinction suggests that China did not fully endorse the term, at least not in the way the rest of the world understood it. China's worldview pivots on the distinction between developed and developing nations. It perceives itself not as a part of the Global South, but as the champion of developing countries, a leader striving to bridge the gap between the haves and the have-nots. The term Global South frames the world differently, portraying it as developed nations flanked by China and Russia, with the rest of the countries forming the Global South. This contrast in perspectives raises intriguing questions about China's stance. So the question arises, why this hesitation and what led to the eventual acceptance of the term Global South by China? China was not invited to the Voice of Global South Summit 2023 hosted by India. Did this snub lead to a change in China's stance? This exclusion certainly did not sit well with China, sparking a wave of discontent and tension between the two Asian giants. It's no secret that China views itself as the representative of developing countries, but this incident seemed to challenge that self-perception. Meanwhile, the term Global South was making its rounds on the international stage. It was used at the G7 Hiroshima summit, a move that only served to fan the flames of China's discontent. China saw this as an attempt to reframe the global narrative in terms that didn't align with its interests. The term Global South, which was initially used to describe economically disadvantaged countries, was now being seen as a way to group nations confronted by China and Russia. The rest of the world, including the G7 nations, viewed the term as a way to categorize countries based on their economic development and political alignment. The international community's embrace of the term Global South seemed to threaten China's position as a representative of developing countries. This, coupled with its exclusion from the Voice of Global South Summit, led to an uproar within China, with many viewing it as an affront to their country's global standing. But despite the international pressure and the mounting tension, China held its ground. It continued to view the world in terms of developed versus developing countries, a perspective that was deeply rooted in its own definition of global dynamics. And just when it seemed like China's stance was unwavering, a surprising turn of events occurred. But that's a story for another scene. Despite the international pressure, China held its ground, but then a surprising turn of events occurred. At the BRICS Business Forum, President Xi Jinping used the term Global South. Was this a nod of acceptance or a strategic move? As the world watched, China's leader stepped up to the podium and for the first time publicly used the term Global South. But was this really a nod of acceptance or a strategic chess move in the complex game of global politics? When President Xi Jinping used the term at the BRICS Business Forum, it signaled China's formal acceptance. However, it's essential to note that China likely retains its own definition of the term. The Chinese worldview has been traditionally divided into developed and developing countries, with China seeing itself as the representative of the developing world. This perspective differs significantly from the Global South narrative, which sees the world as developed countries confronted by China and Russia, with the rest as the Global South. China's acceptance of the Global South is not merely about semantics. It's about creating a discursive space tailored to China's interests. It's about shaping the narrative in a way that reduces the effectiveness of discourse that might go against China's advantage. Imagine it as a game of tug-of-war. On one end, you have China pulling the narrative towards its interests, towards its definition of the world. On the other end, you have the rest of the world, trying to maintain a different perspective. China's acceptance of the term Global South adds weight to their side of the rope, subtly shifting the balance of the narrative. The implications of this shift are far-reaching. It's not just about how China sees itself or how it wants to be seen. It's about how China interacts with the world, how it positions itself on the global stage, and how it influences global politics and discourse. China's acceptance of the term Global South may seem like a minor semantic shift, but it has far-reaching implications for global politics and discourse. Only time will tell how this will shape China's international relations.